kind of give an update, kind of where we've been. Just to kind of give you an overview of what's going on, where we're at, what's going on a little bit. I've got quite an education as being the mayor, let alone now with the cemetery. It's been quite an eye-opening and interesting educational process for me. We had a situation to come back a while back that we had an individual that wanted to bury a loved one in the old section of the cemetery. One of the oldest sections of the cemetery, block 2, I believe is correct. Block 3, excuse me. Yes, 3, absolutely, farthest right. And we had quit, I didn't realize when we had, but we had quit selling plots in that section of the cemetery in 2001, I believe, is that correct? Because the fact was we knew there were unidentified folks out there that had been laid to rest. There was the concern of, are the plots really vacant, which is a real problem in the cemetery if you go to sell a plot. So we closed doing that. It was still open to being able to have up to 5 cremations on top of a resting body. Okay, so you could have 6 people actually in one burial spot, which I didn't know when I learned that. So as we went through this process, we had an individual that was upset because they couldn't buy a plot there, even though there were some empty plots, we think, right? So for the safety and sanctity of burial, we didn't want to take risks of somebody having a grave digger digging that morning and then, oh golly, what are we going to do? So I think it was a good choice back in 2001 by the city to do that. A lot of places were trying to make money, so they want to sell as many spots as they got available. I think we erred on trying to be respectful to the whole process of grieving and losing a loved one, right, and going through that time. So that's what happened. We inherited, somebody may be able to give me an exact date, but sometime in the 60s, I think the earlier 60s, we inherited the public and privately held cemetery that got transferred to the city of Centralia. I'm not sure, but I think it's at least 100 years old, the first burial in that cemetery, okay? And so we had a transfer and ownership of what record keeping had gone on from the inception of the first cemetery record to when they handed us the books. We literally have books that are falling apart. We probably need to try to preserve them in some way, and we've talked a little bit about that, how we preserve what we got, because the documents were literally falling apart in the floor, which we had to be very, very careful with them. So what we did with this situation, there was a lot of hubbub, and there was a lot of quick rush to judgment on the city, and the city trying to help, which was disappointing, because we communicated a little bit more. I think we could have done something. But something that did come from that situation was we did something that we haven't done for anybody since 2001, and that was sell a burial plot with 3 contingency opportunities in case. And we had a grave digger come up, check 3 spots, so we had 3 options, so that if we started to dig, found something, we could cover that back and move on, right? It worked out. That being said, from that, the record keeping is only as good as the records we got. We've transferred everything to the GIS system, so that's all been done. But we're at the mercy of what records we were handed, and in no case is it, I think, race specific in any way. I think there's all kinds of people and all kinds of races and creeds that are buried out there in unmarked graves potentially. There's got to be some. We know there has to be. We were a rail town. So we had a railway. So we had something a lot of towns didn't have. You had you had wagons, you had horses, and you had on foot. And you had transient people moving across the country and moving around. We had trains, so we had even more people than that. So we had a lot of transient people that came through, and it wasn't like you had a driver's license in your pocket, or you weren't tied to a database where you could be found. So we know that over the years and way back that there had to be potentially a mother carrying a child that had a bad pregnancy experience and lost both of them that got buried out there. We don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that could have happened, right? So the one thing that came from this was a real educational process for me, and I think for a lot of us, about the cemetery and what's out there. Vicky's been very helpful because she's gone back and known a lot of families, and we talked about when you don't have the records, you have to go back to families and hope that those that are still alive can help you with that legacy and that history of who is where out in the cemetery. So there was a couple of issues that happened over the course of time. I thought it was because of a flood, but it wasn't because of a flood. I was wrong about that. It's because there was a low section in the cemetery that held water, was sunken, always was holding water. So we had a real intent to do the right thing, I think, back at that time, and that was to move those grave markers off, build the ground up, and then reset the markers. Well, there's some controversy about that the markers are in the right place, because the gentleman that had it all here and written down or something somewhere went to lunch and come back and they had put back markers. So there was a problem there.
When was that?
When was that? Can somebody tell me when that was? It was before my time, but was it in the 80s?
It was
1999 is what I have.
99.
Yeah, I was gonna say before 2000.
Okay, so 99 is when that happened. So there's some discrepancy there. We know the names of do we have the list of the people that the markers were moved from in that section at that time? Do we have that list or not? I think that's missing too.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when you keep it in your mind and somebody writes it down on some paper and they go to lunch. It's crazy, but it happens, right? I mean, there was no intent, but it happened. So we got that problem, plus we have the history of record keeping that got transferred to us, which at that point, I think we've done an excellent job of keeping records of everything I've looked at. I think that the sections and the people we've had keeping it since it became publicly controlled by the city of Centralia, we've done, I think, a really extraordinarily good job. And I was told that by the gravedigger that digs in many other places for other towns and cities. So that was an interesting part of it too. So it was good feedback. He was very helpful. That guy was unbelievably helpful the day he was out at the cemetery and was telling us, and he had those widget things, and he literally could walk over and if somebody buried her at the cross. And it was tested on Darcy Kelly's husband's grave, and she has a plot next to him. And she walked across, and he was there where he was supposed to be. She wasn't there where she was supposed to be, and then just on past it, it crossed again where we thought we had empty spots. So I think there's some real, it's a real tool of some sort. I don't know how it works, but it did. So we did probing, that kind of thing, to make sure that day. So what's come from that is there's been, was a concern about the fact that there are people out there in unmarked graves. So what do you do about that, right? And so, and what do you reasonably do about that? I think it's also got to be kept in mind, because you can lose your mind, and we don't have an extensive budget to do all kinds of things that get crazy, you know, but Greg had talked about, and we have resources that we can use. So we started talking last time we were here. We talked about reaching out to some resources. Greg was going to, we'll get some updates on that stuff. But we were going to reach out to some resources, universities, some places like that. Heather did a lot of investigating and looking into where people had gotten help, right? There's radiography you can do, there's lots of things you can do. I think the problem is, I think there's an ability to potentially locate that this is occupied. But how far do you go? Because the fact is, DNA is only good unless you can match it to something. You gotta have a database to match that to, unless these people in these earlier years were in today's criminal FBI and police database, matching them would be almost impossible, right? So I think what we were trying to do is get a group together of citizens that want to see the history of Centralia preserved as best as possible, and for those people that are out there and the people that have families out there to do the best justice we can in correcting anything we can find and doing it in a way that's reasonable and economical enough. Not that money should be over history, but at the same time, if you're not gaining a lot, to what extent, right? So I think we're trying to use a level-headed approach about what we can do to make this a lot better situation if we can. And we were at a point that we were going to do some gathering of some data and trying to go back. And I think that we talked about that the past sexton that was in your role before you, she when they did the database up, she went out and seen families and spent a lot of time, I guess, trying to get historical data and get tied facts together and things for those sections of the cemetery. So that was I think done. We felt to pretty exhausting measures that was really a lot of effort put into that, which was good at that time, because now, you know, years later, there's a lot more people that aren't here that were family members that would be descendants that would have any knowledge of their legacy, right? Who was where. So that's kind of where we're at today, I think, in general, if that's a good synopsis. I didn't mean to bore people with 10 minutes, but I think it's first all good to be on the same page, right? And I think this stems to anywhere that we end up, doing everything we can to try to get resources and help find unmarked graves where there are people. That was suggested by Mr. Dawson in the last meeting that everybody should have some sort of marker. So if we do find those people, is there a way to program an opportunity to put a marker of some sort? We won't know their name, but maybe it's as simple as a stone cross on each one of those unmarked graves. I don't know. I mean, we're open for just saying that they ought to know that there's somebody's resting there, right? That I think is a good idea as well. And then we talked about the fact that, maybe some sort of a plaque, a monument out there to those souls that are resting there, that the unnamed souls in the cemetery, a tribute to them and a recognition that those folks are there in some form or fashion. I apologize for that. I should just leave it silent probably, because I'm in a meeting all the time, it seems like. So, anyway, that's kind of where we're at. Does anybody have anything to add? I mean, and so we were kind of go ahead and do some fact finding and see who wanted to join and who wanted to be involved.
There are 3 other people who have interest in this search committee. They couldn't be here tonight, but glad that all of you were able to come.
Absolutely.
The maps that I provided here, I'm sorry. You had
No, it's all you. I was kind of just playing the stage, and for me as much as anything, to make sure I understood where we're at, so perfect.
So the maps here is, this first map is the general map of the whole cemetery. And our biggest concern right now are at the bottom 4 sections, the most southern section.
Left side of those 4 blocks there.
Yeah, there's and then we've got those particular section blocks here. Make copies of those. You'll notice that some of them say, some of the grave spaces say NS, which means no stone. We don't know if there's someone there or not. It could be, it could not be. We don't know. So that's what we're looking at, to trying to find if there's any way possible to
Is that
identify
what
them.
can I ask what, I can't see those. Are those the ones in pink?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's pink, but
Okay,
it
okay.
could possibly be.
Okay, and I can't see that.
Yeah, color coding is not always
Okay, got
going to be pink, but it could
Got it.
possibly be.
Okay.
So,
It's my question, is it block 3 that is the most unidentified?
yes.
That's the way it looks to me. I went out and went through all those blocks, and
It looks like it to me. That's the one
Yeah.
closest to the highway that we had the issue
that's
with.
the corner of Southgate and Jefferson.
Right.
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 Yeah, I went down all the blocks, and that's what it looked like. So maybe that's the one we should concentrate on first, or?
Well, I'd say take a block and work on it first. And first you need to find out whether there's resources out there that will help identify, find out what the cost is gonna be. Mr. Han has
My daughter, Kirsten, is a senior at Mizzou. She's getting a double major, but one of her majors is anthropology, archaeology. And she's very interested in helping too.
Great.
And she also believes there might be some resources there, some classes, some students, some interns, some folks that might be, the worst you're gonna say is no, we can't help you. But I'm gonna give her the information, and she's gonna reach out to the department chair and see what might be available for us to do.
And I think that's what Heather
Yeah.
found. That
Okay.
We were very interested to find out if Mizzou could, so if you have a contact, that's great. The city of Rolla partnered with Missouri S&T, and they were able to get some really great information. I presented it at the last meeting that we had, so we could probably have copies. I know it's online.
Yes, I have
But-
a copy of it here. I can make
Yeah,
copies.
it's what is it called, the geographical survey? And it's very interesting, and it has a lot of really good information, but it's just, we can't afford it. So if we could partner with the university, that would be amazing.
And just real quick, the NS means no stone, so, but you're not even sure there's
That's right, we're
That
not
doesn't
sure.
mean-
Basically means not sure if
Right.
there's somebody there or not.
Yeah, we're not
Okay.
sure if
Yeah.
someone's there, but it does
Okay.
mean that there is no monument there.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
But if it says unknown, that means you know there's probably no one there. but
We
then-
don't know that for sure.
We're not
So
sure.
if it's unknown, you know nothing.
We know nothing.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we've heard that there could be the possibility of, just going back to maybe, a Civil War, you know, the Centralia battlefield days, as well as, you know, maybe there's a mass grave, we have no idea, without being able to.
You know, the grave there
See.
said that they found places where the only thing they found was a boot or a belt buckle. But the thing still did its deal because of some way or another that
The ground's been disturbed.
the way it's been
Yeah.
disturbed, the electrical pulse from the ground or whatever, you know, that is disturbed. That's how that works, is the way I understood it. It's not some crazy magic, it's a science to it, so,
Did they use ground penetrating radar? Is that what they used?
no.
No.
We have not used ground penetrating radar at all.
What they use?
A rod, they rod.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
right.
just to make sure it didn't hit
Right.
a casket.
Well,
He has two rods that he holds.
His
And
hand.
Which,
they're-
yeah, like-
Widgets,
Yeah,
like for
like-
water.
yeah.
And
To
then
find water.
yeah, they
Yeah.
turn in whenever there's a grave there, and then they go back out. It was very interesting.
It was interesting when we got those out, I thought just, you watch this on movies, you know, but he was on the money, and he already walked down through there, and he says, from here to there, it shows it's open, but there's 5 people buried from here to there.
wow.
Well, I said, well, that's a good way for us to start this day off, so that's how it went. But, I mean, it's very interesting, because he walked past where we knew there was nobody, and they went open, and then when they got to her husband's already resting there, it closed right next to one another. So it was mind-boggling to me, but it worked. But that being said, there are much more scientific things. I'm saying, and the ground penetrating radar is part of these geographic studies, I think, that they do. And that's part of the whole package. So that's really where we got to get to, I think, to be positive, to be able to identify whether there are people, if those places are being used. There's a resting place there, you know what I'm saying? I think it's gonna take that scientific ability to figure it out. But we'd be more open to hear whatever you find out through your daughter.
I'm gonna, yeah,
And
I'll
he's gonna
talk
find
to her
out.
tonight.
And then Greg had some stuff he was gonna check into, I believe, too, Mr. Pauly, is that correct? If I remember last time right?
Yeah, that is correct, but I really didn't have much luck. I went to the Historical Society of Missouri,
Mhm.
and the woman, everybody was very nice to try and help. She went through the directory and really could not find any of the government agencies, state government agencies that would really have anything to do with that. DNR does that type of thing, but only for historically significant sites. And as old as our cemetery is, it's just not, it wouldn't qualify. And then I did put a call into, to the university and did not get, any response from them. I also, she directed me also to the Columbia Cemetery, thought they might be able to help it. It sounded like all they were doing is what we've already done, which is the GIS mapping of their cemetery. So, I'm sorry to say it, you know, I just didn't really have a whole lot of luck.
Well, you did do something. I mean, you've ruled out we've explored what those options were that way, and we at least know that we weren't able to get there. Now, Mr. Hand's daughter, being in the program over there, could probably maybe get to some people that this would pique their interest, and they would be able to drive, potentially getting us some resources. So why don't we go that route?
Yeah,
You
I'm-
checked,
I think so,
and
yeah.
what I think you've done's been excellent,
Yes.
so thank you, Greg, for
Yes, thank you.
taking charge of that and taking the time to follow through on that. So that's excellent.
No problem.
Yeah,
I'm glad we've got somebody, I do think that's true, somebody
so you know
with
sometimes,
relationships
right?
within that department should be able to get, you know,
Yeah,
we get more accomplished.
sure, absolutely. So good. Thank you for your help in that. So that's all good feedback to know. We've crossed, you know, you've got to start to eliminate what is not going to work and then to drive towards what we maybe have potentially the opportunity to do, so.
If we could prove that there were, Civil War graves buried in there, would that make it historically significant and maybe raise the interest in it?
That's a good question. You're asking the wrong guy for me. I don't know. I mean,
Well, according to at our museum, the Civil War people, if they were killed down in Allen Street, they would not be buried in our cemetery because they were disinterred by groups of bodies and taken to the National Cemetery. So most of those people would not have been buried.
so we probably don't have many
I'm
at
thinking
all to
that
say that this is
probably
a,
would
I
not.
think you'd have to be able to prove or prove a case that this would be a significant burial place
Exactly.
for displaced soldiers or something probably. So I think that probably answers that.
Yeah.
Because it boils down to resources, money, and time, right? And so we know that people are gonna say, this is of significance enough that we need to invest in this. Oh, because I think it's almost like saying, you know, if you had a Native American Indian married out there, I'm gonna guess there probably is one or two out there, but unless you can prove that this was a resting place, you know, probably get that help would be hard, I think. So I think that's our dilemma. As he put it, he being the cemetery, I guess grave digger, Scott, but he's a grave digger. I mean, that's crazy, but he was very informative, and he said that this is a potter's field, and he said this is, and this is not at all unusual in the oldest parts of cemeteries, because record keeping's lost, it's not kept. Somebody that was supposed to be doing it did have a baby and everything went fine, but they did, 2 people, 3 people died while they were, you know, taking care of what they had to take care of or whatever it may be. So,
And it's possible that there were stones out there and they were just made of such a material that they disintegrated
gone.
over time.
Right.
And I mean, I can't say, I we would have to look to see how, you know, what the oldest grave is out there that we are aware of, but I do know that, it goes back to the mid-1800s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dr. Turner's baby, wasn't it?
Dr.
Dr.
Sneed
Sneed.
was the
Sneed, yeah,
first
Dr.
kid.
Sneed, yeah.
That
now
kid,
what year was that?
1857.
I think
Okay,
that
so you're
sounds
talking,
right.
you
It
know,
was right at the
100,
beginning of.
Right, the mid-1800s.
100 years at least before 62 or somewhere in there when we took it over, you know, so, I
It
mean,
says online 1852, but we think that Centralia didn't become a town till 57, so.
understood.
Yeah.
Well, that's good information to know as well, so you kind of, you know, put this in a chronological order of what's what.
Is there anything to be found in old newspapers? I mean, I can't think what it would be that would, you know, help identify. I've been researching Far West Cemetery that's in our neighborhood, and then the Fountain Cemeteries on our farm, and going back and finding the obituaries to find out who was actually buried there. But that's about all that would tell. It wouldn't tell who was buried where.
Right,
Yeah.
so what have you, I mean, how do you identify where? and who?
Yeah.
You know, that's, I think, the problem. I mean, I think that's what it boils down to. Are we gonna be able to identify very many people? I don't believe we will, because I think it goes back to people that have the legacy still in their mind, that are alive, right? That legacy's really died out, and I know that, you know, but so, I mean, I think the best thing we did was, I'm glad to hear that we had a stringent effort to, when we went to the GIS, to try to chronicle everything and to go ask and spend time. I think a lot of time was spent at that time, trying to make sure when we did that mapping that we went back and found anybody that was living and had descendants, you know, descendants of people that were out there to get that information. And I think that was, she did do that, I think, very, very stringently and thoroughly. So, that being said, I think that was good that that happened, or we would have missed an opportunity to maybe found out more, you know, that we missed. But I think we're at a point, identifying is gonna be hard, I think, who. I think being able to identify with radiography or some of these things, and with the help of the students and what they're wanting to specialize in, there may be a real opportunity for us to at least identify someone is here, if that's possible, and affordable in some form or fashion. And then, you know, I think that it's a no-brainer that we should be able to put together some sort of some funding or something, or, you know, something to definitely put a marker out, and then figure out how we could mark those graves that do get identified through the process, and that happens. It may take some time, but I think we could get those things done because people rally around wanting to contribute, help, whatever. You know, then we can see if there's any kind of programs that we can get through grants or anything as well. problem we're setting in right now is Boone County is gonna end up at 50% of their sales tax for the year. The state's gonna be off 40 to 50%, and that rolls up to who's gonna pay their sales tax, who's gonna pay their personal property taxes on time, who's gonna pay them at all, who's gonna pay the real estate taxes. There's gonna be, this is yet to come, because a lot of middle income people are gonna be strained, I think, when that happens. That being said, grants are gonna be maybe tough for the next couple of years, you know. That's what we kinda have taken on as a mantra in our mind of running the city's business, right? We wanna do all we can to help, within the reason of the budget and what we could do as a city of Centralia too. But the problem is we're limited. We've had to have a reduction in force, just to be ahead of the game for when it came down that our sales tax was great, because it did, because everybody was sequestered in Centralia and they were buying anything and everything from everything they needed right here in town. So our sales tax was healthy, but that's misleading of the overall health of the money the city's gonna be able to get in through these grants and things. So, I didn't mean to take over the meeting. I was really tired, but you asked me to, so I'm just kind of trying to make sure we're on the same page of where we're going. I took this very seriously. Okay, it was, to me, an indictment of me, the city, in a way. When this happened, I think it's the goodness came from it, but we as the city of Centralia, and we as citizens of Centralia, want to do the right thing. And if there's something wrong, we'll fix it, right? But you just can't agree to fix something at other cost that it finally satisfies an individual, okay? So in fairness, I think that we could do a better job, but I was being asked things I had no idea about, and a lot of us did not know until, you know, I would have never known when we took the cemetery over as a city, and then it was 100 years before that, so somebody had been keeping records, or maybe not. So it's kind of where we're at, you know, and I believe anybody and everybody should be fairly represented, and if we have unmarked graves, whatever we can do to at least recognize that first. I think that those souls are out there, and they're unnamed, but they aren't in God's world, you know, they're not unnamed. They are in our cemetery, but they are there. They're making some sort of a notice of that. I think that's something that's definitely reasonable to do. And to mark graves, as I think Tinker brought up, you know, it's an unknown soldier, it's an unknown person in our cemetery, right? So I think those are things that we can do, and I think we just have to figure out if we can get help from the university at this time. Would be, or if somebody else has an idea of someplace we can go.
That's a good start.
That's a good start. We found, and what we found in research early on, was it was universities, state universities and so forth, that had helped with these kind of mappings and things, right? Some of it is general, is helping them get into the GIS program properly or whatever, but even going further with radiography, like you said, those kind of things. So,
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Is our goal in doing this, you're not opening these sections back up to
No.
sell plots? That's
no, I
not,
will say that, no.
okay. All
It's
right.
not worth the risk.
All right, I just want to, so
Not-
basically, we're
it's
trying to
not at
figure
all-
out,
No, I don't think it's at all worth the risk of the radiography not being right, and at 11 o'clock, they
Right.
get done with the
I just want to make sure.
service,
Yeah,
and they come out and they don't have a resting spot.
Okay.
Right? And I think that was the reason. I think science is great, but science doesn't catch everything, especially in, because bodies could be not buried properly, on top of one another, close to one another, which would make it look like, and it might be not at the right angle. I mean, I just think there's problems with thinking that we would never, I don't think, open that up. I think we'd be opening ourselves up.
okay, that's what I was.
Yeah, no, I don't believe so.
Because you said you sold one.
Well, we did because, of the stress and strain. I had 3 different special interest groups call me within 14 hours. I want to know what Centralia was going to do about it was all kinds of things they
Yeah,
said about
yeah.
our injustice in our cemetery and so forth, you know, and.
So you're not wanting to open it back up to sell plots, you're just wanting to make sure
No.
that we are recognizing the people that are there.
And the young man,
Sorry.
that's right, and the young man,
Okay.
in fairness, the young man was going through a death. It was a tough situation. He had a brother in the cemetery. So there's more to it than that. I mean, he had a resting space for family, and he wanted family to be with family,
I
right?
understand
And it
that.
was supposed to be open right next to it.
Well, a big part of that was the gravestones are not in the right place
Right.
on those, and so it's hard for them to know, because I can look at it and I know from my childhood where on that first 2 rows, this person is supposed to be further over this way. But they put them back in order in a straight line instead of the way they were, so
Hmm.
I would say probably 99% of those are not in the
Or
right
around
place.
spots.
The geographic layout is not correct
Is not
to the
correct.
orientation of who's there.
So that was one of the big problems with that family,
Okay.
was because they're not in the right spots.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to look at this headstone and this person's supposed to be there, well, the headstone's there, but they're
That's
great.
not them, that's not there.
Over
They're
here
not-
somewhere.
Somebody else.
Right.
And reason prevailed, everything was fine, it's all worked out, and it worked out the best of our ability to make it work. I offered, and I knew aunts, uncles, family very well from the area of Mexico and around Sturgeon and the folks, and so that helped a lot too. So we were able to get on the ball and get something going. The ladies at here did a great job of spending about 4 hours double checking and cross-examining and getting with the Historic Society and trying to make sure that we were able to give 3 reasonable spots, one next to the sibling, naturally, and it showed open. And so we were willing to take that because of the circumstances of the family and it being a brother and sister. That's what motivated me to think that we should do something we hadn't done since 2001. And that's what we did. So, and we had 3 options, we had 3 flags in case this one didn't work, this one didn't work, And then I said, holy cow, we don't know what we'll do from there. But it worked out. The Lord intervened, it worked out great, which we wanted, and so it was good. But no, our intent's not to be able to sell
Okay.
it. And I mean, it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, we'd like to find, but you can't. I mean, because we're starting to become, our cemetery's starting to fill up.
Yeah, we're some course over across from McDonald's already, so
So
everything
it's,
else is sold.
does anybody else, while we're talking, does anybody else have any thoughts of other resources we haven't thought of or that comes to mind right now? If it doesn't, I would suggest if something does, send out an email to Phyllis, let her know, she can share it, that kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Marcus Blair, he's one of the research members who wants to participate. He wasn't able to do that tonight because of church, so just also an FYI, if you all try to get together, try not to do it on a Wednesday night, okay?
Yeah.
It has
That's
conflict
good.
in other people's church events, but he too is got some knowledge, just like you and your daughter have on this type of issue. So I think he might have some resources too.
Okay.
And
And they may want to get together collaboratively, work together.
Yes.
I mean, so,
yes,
yeah.
Has anybody contacted the funeral homes to see if maybe they have any old records?
well, Fenton's will not have any. They won't have anything from the '60s on up to present,
Oh,
1960s. So
they didn't inherit any from a previous.
they did, but it's not in any kind of a semblance of organization. And they're kind of in the midst of trying to get that organized, but there's other things on their plate too. And also, I have gone previously over to Oliver's, and they have some old records, but not on anything this old. I haven't been over there, so that it could be a resource that you might.
I might say, we got all of the old, it's sad to say, we got all of the old records from Metter because they were all card files, and so I got, I don't know, 1,000, I don't know how many. We got them all and we entered them into our system, so for the genealogy side of it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so we had all of those for Mary Ann that she had saved from the old house. So she didn't want to just burn them, I didn't want to just burn them, so we actually entered those all in our system because they all had social numbers on them, they had things that were not for public, And so we just entered all of those people, and so they do go back pretty far.
Okay,
So I mean,
That's
can we
good to know.
cross-reference, I mean, maybe what we should do with that, I don't know if we have, we should cross-reference that list to see if they were buried in the,
We did note that on them, where it told where they were
oh,
buried.
so you actually,
So we
we're able to
actually-
confirm they had a burial place.
Right, we entered where they were buried, and it told everything about the funeral, like who sang and whatever. And so we entered that in our system just so that we had the relatives for the people for genealogy side of it. And so I didn't think that they would be of any value, but you know, they may be, they may be of value.
Well, that's good
That's
information.
So we do have those on my system at the museum.
Is that, what kind of a system are you using?
Does it have a name?
well,
We just
Excel,
have, we
or-
just
Is
have. all
it,
these-
is it an Access database or is it maybe an Excel file?
It is an Excel file,
Okay, okay.
So that's easily sorted.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
but I think that, you know, there'd be no reason that we couldn't, like, share that.
yes,
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
have
that would
a
be
file.
great if you could.
We enter every obit, no matter when it is in Centralia. We enter everything in our system.
Well, that's
Oh,
But we also
I
have,
don't know when did Metters come to Centralia?
I'm sorry,
Do you remember when the Metters came to Centralia?
I would say before the 50s, she worked at
See,
ABC.
because when it goes back past that, because I don't know who they were using as, you know.
But wasn't there a funeral home there
Yeah,
before
Blues.
her?
Well, there were Blues down here on the corner across from the Baptist church.
Exactly.
That was Blues in this parking lot now, Blues.
But I think, I don't know, you might check this out, but I think Todd Kendrick might have those records.
That might be, I
I-
think
I
Todd
think-
does.
We had a lady that came to talk to us about wanting to do the revitalization of the building over here. And at one time, across from where Faye's, Ellsbury's deal is, over in there underneath, that was a furniture store upstairs and was a funeral home underneath.
And that was Bush's
Okay,
furniture.
that was a funeral home, and they
And they
sold
had a funeral.
furniture, and that was not an uncommon practice, is what I learned.
Exactly.
Because they could make the caskets out of the wood, so they could do the woodwork for the caskets, and so that was not an unusual thing for those two to be
That's exactly
assembled
right.
with one another.
Really?
I never had known that, but we learned that from them. I'm serious, I didn't, how? Well, that's wild. So I mean, Bush's, you thought it's who it was.
Yeah, Bush's who had the furniture, yeah. And they had the
Okay.
funeral home,
Well,
yeah. so they had-
Well,
I
that
had
was
heard
underneath.
that name, but I had heard Blue's name.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In this 1906 pictorial, you can see every single thing that was ever in Centralia. You know that book. We had that reprinted for everybody to have. But in that 1906 pictorial for Centralia, it was printed to show everything that was in Centralia in 1906.
I have a copy of it.
Yeah, we sell those all the time. People love to have them because if their house is in
Reprint
them.
them now?
We have quite a few. We probably have hundreds left.
Oh, cool. See, I have one of the original ones because my house is in it.
The people that don't know that 1906 pictorial, it's worth it to see what used to be someplace that is not there anymore.
What it is today or what have you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The worst part about it is that there's no exact address of them.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
just pictures, and there's a lot of interesting pictures of people in that too.
Right.
So do we need to have someone that would be kind of like a group leader for this research committee? And who would like to maybe take that on, or?
Well, maybe, Mike, maybe you could be
I
chairman.
was thinking you.
And I'll be your assistant. I am so interested because I think not gonna live long enough to see me get my stuff done at the museum. And we're constantly, trying to do, and we have so many city records, okay? And I think Heather said they were of no value probably, but we're fearful of throwing them away. We have, I think, probably 20 books, big books, and they go back to 1857.
Oh,
And so, when we close, we're gonna put them all on the tables, and we're gonna save something we think is pertinent to us, or something that we think is salvageable in some way. but they're getting, all the buggy things, I mean, they're really bad up in the attic, and so we want to save them if it's possible, or save the information that's there.
Put them in the freezer if they're buggy.
Yeah, it's like silverfish things, you know,
Put them in the freezer.
but I think that rather than just throwing them without looking at them is just, that's just
Oh.
sacrilege to me. So, I think we wanna see what's on all those pages. I don't know if any of you've ever seen them even. John Angel's the only one that went up there and looked, and he thought they were too dirty or something. But I think we should look at them. Don't you all tell me, or I would throw them, but I just
No, don't
think we
throw
ought
'em.
to see what's there.
Don't throw them, please don't.
And everything's handwritten, of course, you know, so.
I'm a retired librarian, and on top of that, I was a catalogger. So if there's anything that I can do that doesn't take a lot of transportation, as far as even helping Blues, or not Blues, Fentons to sort through some of their old records, maybe I could help them do that, so that we get that information a little faster, maybe?
And one other thing, I thought, you know, we closed the museum, and so we would be open for being able to use it. I mean, we use our museum even though we're not open, we still use it because we have room, and we have big table places, we had our board last night, and so that's always an option that I'm willing to, for us to use that.
It's closed down.
Oh, that's good.
Historical, is it? So, I'm learning something here. So the historical museum is closed now?
Well, we're not really closed, we're there to work and do stuff, but we usually for December, January.
Oh, you mean for a period of time of year
We're
you're
just
closed?
closed just because if we have to do repairs,
No,
or
understood.
if we have to do things
No,
like that.
It's not going away.
Oh, no, 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 no,
Maybe heard
no,
of
no,
it.
no,
It's
no,
one
no,
of the
no.
greatest things in town, man, is
We
that
have
place.
lots of money, okay?
Okay, good, okay. Well, that's, well,
There you go.
good. So,
I just solved their
you want to invest in
There
some,
you
you
go.
want to invest in some radiography?
Right. One of my dear friends, I guess you all maybe saw in the Tribune, they gave $300 million.
Oh, you're friends with them, huh?
And so when I saw it, I thought, it's June Comer, and Fred and June Comer from St. Louis, and he gave for the Royal School of Mines, see, that's where he graduated from, and so they just donated $300 million. I'm like, oh my gosh, who has that accumulation? I can't believe. So maybe they could help us, so. They gave our Federated Garden Club $1 million, so.
Wow.
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 It's good to have friends like that.
No
So
problem.
if someone could take leadership in this, that would be great.
I think we have two co-leaders
I-
right
I
here.
think that'd be great.
Well, I think you have, if the two of you
Yeah.
conspire
Yeah,
together,
I could do that if you want to do that.
you can run the one way
Yeah.
with what I've heard of looking at outside resources. We have internal information that needs to be managed and looked at through Fenton's and so forth, and the historical data you told us about with all of these that you had, right? So maybe you all can pair up and figure out how to, reach out to Fenton through Phyllis and figure out how we can maybe coordinate that side of it. Maybe you could, and you two can collaborate and
I
keep
think
each
you
other.
could, and
Oh,
if
yeah.
you need to have a place to meet,
Yeah.
if not, I mean, I think we could probably always meet somewhere in the city things, but
Oh, sure.
you wouldn't
Right.
need you wouldn't have to do anything to meet at the museum.
Yeah.
Right, sure, so. Are you all okay with doing that
Yeah, I'm
then?
fine, yeah.
That'd be
Because,
great.
yeah, I think that technology-wise, you're gonna help figure out what resources are available and outside resources that way. And from, more of a,
And anybody that
Historical
would want
side.
to come and look at all of the old records would be great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come check it out.
And maybe, Glenda can,
Work with you.
yeah, work with you all too, and
That'd be
we
fine,
can get in
yeah,
contact with
good.
Todd
I'd be glad to.
I know
and maybe
Frank.
John
Yeah, good.
Oliver.
And I know Todd would, and them would be
Yeah.
glad to help in any way they
Yeah.
can. I mean, I think Todd's trying to find out what's what still probably.
Exactly.
I think that it was quite
There's also a possibility, now I may be wrong about this, but I've been doing a lot of genealogy, and I was trying to figure out where my grandfather went to school. And I know it was out south of town, but I don't know if he went to Grasslands or if he went out to Dunbar out there. There is almost nothing on the rural schools around Centralia, anywhere. So I called the library and talked to, is her name Joy? Amy. And she said they have a bunch of boxes of stuff with basically paper, and she really doesn't even know what's in it. But I thought she said it came from the city.
About schools?
No, about everything,
Oh.
old stuff. So I would like to call her back and see and verify whether it was actually things that were cleaned out from the vaults here at the city, or if it came from schools, or if it's just general information that was in those boxes. She said they were waiting until they got the floors remodeled before they did anything with them.
Yeah, she's the same age as Mary.
And so I'd like
They
to
live-
call
Are you
her
gonna
back,
follow up
maybe
on that then?
verify, and I'll follow up
My
on it,
mind
see if
isn't
there was
working very
anything
good to
there.
remember.
Okay, you follow up on that, see if there's anything relevant.
I'm sorry, I've got her new kid and I can't
You
hear
know, you
it.
could.
You're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Haven't seen Mary lately, she hasn't been home, she's just working.
There's also Jenny Zollers that's interested in this committee, and James Dixon.
So
and
you said Jenny?
Yeah, Jenny,
Yeah, okay.
uh-huh. And if you still have my email, all of their email addresses are on there, but if you want me to get that written down for you, I can do that for you.
Okay, if they're on this page that we got online, is this, these that are here? Okay.
James Dixon, and Marcus Blair, he's the pastor out at Cornerstone.
Okay,
Yeah, and he's interested in that, and also, didn't you tell me you had a,
Mary Ellen McVicker?
yeah.
Mary Ellen Harshbarger McVicker.
I was gonna say, I know Mary Ellen.
Yeah,
She
she
called
had
me.
some things that she had written about the cemetery, but I think they were kind of general stuff maybe, but she'd probably be interested in this.
I know she's always been a member of our museum,
Yeah,
I love it,
yeah.
because she's calling.
She came out to the Fountain Cemetery and, you know,
Yeah. Well, the more people we have that will help, and I think the people in Centralia will appreciate whatever we
Yeah, and I think,
actually accomplish.
and I think
they
each
will.
one of you have a piece of the puzzle,
Mhm.
you know, so,
Well, we're multitasking here and looking in different directions of
Right.
everything that we can, right? That's what we're doing. So I think that's great. I think
So-
what we've talked about, that's a great start.
so if you all can coordinate and get a time where you can meet and go from there and then report back and,
So would it be up to, like Mike and myself, or somebody will tell us, can we make our, when we're gonna meet? I mean, or will
Yeah.
you tell
Yeah,
us?
if you wanna call a meeting, you two
Oh, okay.
confer and let us know.
yeah, let me know.
When you think it's relevant for
Yeah.
the group to get together and meet. And, you know, probably in the next couple of weeks, we should, and try to do it on a night that everybody can be here, because I think for us to have a couple of these people that might have resources or networking. Today, it's all about networking, right? So you might know somebody gets you in the back door somewhere where nobody can even go, you know, so I mean,
Well, I think even Mike and I would like it if there was more of the people that are on here.
no, agreed,
Yeah.
I agree. So
Yeah.
I think you should probably look to make it in a couple of weeks and do it on
Okay.
a Tuesday or Thursday maybe, versus not a church night, you know,
Yeah.
on Wednesday for a lot of people. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Is there like a list,
Yes, I do.
like online? Because
Yes.
if I find an obituary in some of
You
my
can check it.
research,
Yes.
I can check it and see if it's,
Cross-reference it,
I
make
can
sure
get
it's
you
right.
that link, it's on the Centralia website,
okay,
and there's a link there to the cemetery and a link then to the online database.
okay.
And you can also look at the, there's a listing plus the maps,
Okay,
and I can help you with that.
okay.
And I keep that up to date. Every time there's a burial, I update that.
Mhm.
I have to
I
say,
don't-
Phyllis fixes us one every year, and we keep all the records. It shows everybody in each plot or wherever they are, it's all alphabetical, it's amazing. and she also gives all of where the veterans are.
Mhm.
And so we love that because that's just very good.
Yeah, I only print that once a year in May, but otherwise, it's always updated on the website.
Perfect.
Well, it sounds like we've got the goals and research teams moving forward. Is that correct? Is that-
And if you want a copy of this information from Rolla, I can get that to you too. Okay? Heather might, you still have that file, we may have to print it rather than copy this, it might, we'll see how it works.
I'm sure I have the file, it's just as easy to email it too, if you'd like to have
Yeah,
it.
That'd be
just email
great,
it to me.
yeah.
I love
Yeah,
email.
give that to me and I'll email it to everybody. Okay,
It should be out there in the meeting packet from the last time.
okay,
We're done.
I think we're done.
As May Rise.
Anybody else?
As May Rise, I would just like as a group to thank you for what you do. I mean, I think it goes unnoticed how much work goes into keeping things straight. And what you've done when they pass the torch to you here, Phyllis, I'd like to publicly say thank you for taking such seriousness to such a serious thing that we record and keep up with. So thanks for all your help.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody else's help, that's gonna be tremendous.
We appreciate you guys.
Okay.
So with that being said, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, folks, absolutely.